need that few seconds of quiet so I can get all the background noise out.
Then why do you keep talking?
Because I already recorded it after getting you guys to shut up. So,
do we really want this at the beginning, though?
Sure, I love it when we banter. Long time, no command, glad you won. I'm joined by Gordon and Josh.
Live and in person.
Hello, everybody.
AKA Gordo and Overlord Shivak. Don didn't come today because he was too freaking cool to hang out with us. So I got to sit around and watch Jordan and Josh play Drop Zone Commander version 2 and beta back to back. And we're just going to have a quick chat here, contrasting the two versions after version 2 being out now for well over a year. Came out in June of 19. So here we are.
Year and a quarter or so?
Yeah. Yeah, so year and a third. So we've had 15 months with version 2, and quite frankly, I've barely played it. I played a few games, and I've tried to be positive about it, but here we are now, recent Balance Pass, some new units released, and I just, let's just jump right into it. So, the version 2 game that you guys played, 1,500 points, PHR versus Scourge, targets of opportunity, standard setup, and it lasted 2 turns.
Yes, the beginnings of both games, I would say, were almost identical.
Yeah. We did the exact same moves.
And to do that, we used the exact same list, but stats from the previous version of the beta and stats from the most recent Balance Pass.
So in the version 2 game, which was the first game for the day, we live streamed, but that doesn't record.
Didn't record. No, we were on Facebook Live. We had a couple people join us for that.
Yeah, but there were 3 objectives found on the very first turn of the game.
No, there was more than that, because you found one, too.
Did you get 3 off on the first turn? No.
Yes.
No, I found one.
He found 2, got 1 off.
I found 1, you found 2 on the first turn.
On the
first turn of the game. So, Gordo was able to basically get 2 off the table within the first 2 turns easily with no interference.
No, we only went 2 turns.
I know, but the 2 you got off the table was with like no input on my side.
Yeah, they were backboard objectives. You had them off like that.
Right. We fought.
So even almost turn 1 essentially.
Well,
yeah.
Fought is a generous word.
Right. So
you speed bumped.
I ended up putting 6 bases of warriors into a central objective, and you were able to double tap with sirens. Was it?
No, he steamrolled you with immortals, and then he had Valkyrie show up to support.
Oh, right.
So yes. I went in with the immortals to begin with, and they did slightly better than average statistically with the rerolls.
They killed 10 models or something to start with.
They forced a fortitude chest on one of your 2 squads.
Right. So I went in with 4 bases, and I shot everything it had, and it killed 8
warriors.
8 warriors.
And after all the rerolls, 2 squads versus 1 squad, it's mathed out right about right.
Sure. Then we went into turn 2. And the squad of Valkyrie jumped in.
Correct.
Rapid insertion and finished off just demolishing that squad that had the objective.
Correct.
While leaving the other objective, the other squad alone.
Completely alone.
And
15
And by this
warriors.
point, so Jordan had mopped the floor with half of the warriors in the building. You hadn't fired a single shot in retaliation. He took the objective and was walking out the door with it.
On top of that, I had not gone with my Medusa, which in version 2 has flame, and you can directly target bases.
Right.
As opposed to flaming in version 1, where you could, but it could go against friendlies just as frequently, or you just couldn't flame.
You couldn't flame into buildings, I don't think, in version 1.
No. You couldn't fire on or into a building
that was occupied. Yeah.
So because of that flame, I even kind of, not quite, but essentially wiped your other's stand of
right. Yeah, like it was
immortals. But that didn't even matter because I had found the other building that I could reach but not get out of. I had found that objective, and I got that off board.
Right.
So turn 1, the far corner one, I found got off. The first turn, nothing you could do.
Yeah, on turn 1, we found 3 objectives. You found 2. I got 1.
Right.
The one in the center that I found was the one that you murdered my troops, and then
the one that he found on turn
murdered
1 was
CQ.
his lunch money, which you then took from him, bullying him out of the building.
Right. So 2 things in our version 2 game essentially sped up and allowed me to end the game on my second activation of the second turn. Because of the extra movement from deployment on ground transports and medium dropships, it essentially lets you go to center table and deploy first turn, and it lets you get off the same way the next turn. So it came down to essentially I had too many ground units there. I could kind of jump up and down. He did kill my Junos, which I was originally going to send them off the board with the objective. But his first activation, you killed them. But I still had walkers that were on a ground transport close that I could still
pick them up,
drop them, pick them up, and daisy chain off the objective that next activation round 2.
So our version 2 game ended relatively quickly. Hey, I like that about Drop Zone. The games go quick. I mean, we got 2 games in under 6 hours, basically.
Well, even less than that, because we didn't.
There
was a lot of.
We messed around before we got started. We stopped and got lunch. We were chatting on the Facebook Live. We drank a lot. I drank. Did you drink a lot? I drank a lot.
I've had a fair amount.
Yeah.
So, I can't even say the search rolls is what affected the second game going longer.
So, listen, your search rolls in the first game were exceptionally good.
Correct.
Yes.
I chose not to search at all in the contested areas in the second game because of CQB penalties, and I couldn't remove, because they were contested, I couldn't remove from the building.
So when you're doing a direct compare and contrast, I think that I've stood on this soapbox so many times. CQB in version 2 doesn't work.
It's not so much that, it's it's not the shooting, it's the way the activations go and the way that you're not tied together. Like, you can just leave.
Right.
If you
you
have
can
chosen
just leave,
to,
and then you can raffle stomp somebody and then follow up the next turn.
If you are outnumbered, if you choose to leave, chances are you're losing the objective unless you roll really good. So
it's ridiculous. In version 2, what's ridiculous is that if you're defending a building, you're inside the structure, you've established yourself there. You have
I
had the occupier's advantage.
Yeah, I was in there first.
Is useless and stupid. The reroll is a waste of time that lengthens out the turn. It should just be a +1 to your armor.
Correct, but that has not as much to do with
the fact that you're not shooting back.
That has not as much to do with how I could get the objectives off so quickly one game and I couldn't the other. Because my search rolls through the end of the game, when I actually searched for the objectives, my rolls were not that dissimilar.
No,
I rolled
threes.
well both games.
Yeah.
It's an easy choice to automatically search in version 2 because there's no penalty to it. Because it's not hurting your offensive capabilities, and you can just get out. Whereas there's no deep tactical choice. It's just you go in, you search for it, and you can
There's
leave.
zero risk reward.
Correct. And it's all risk reward, in it's not just beta, it's all in version 1. There was a lot of risk reward in going in and searching for an objective, especially forward board.
So our particular mission, which was not like a table corners mission, it was more, there was 5 objectives.
Classic targets of opportunity.
Right. So, so in grabbing objectives and running off the table, the quicker movement, I think, is just a little bit too quick. The fact that we were able to get models into different buildings, and so same building layout, same everything, playing the beta, the buildings and stuff were just out of reach. We weren't able to get to the same places turn 1. We weren't able to do different things. Now, some things in version 2 that I really did like, the energy versus armor is much easier to figure out.
Yep.
We were able to, what's that? Okay, let's do that. The new Screamer rule, so we did play with the new updated rules, and unfortunately my Screamer didn't get to do anything, but we sat down, talked about the new Screamer rules.
We put him in a building with some units to see what it would look like.
Yeah, it's really hard to talk about as far as offensive capabilities and shooting back and forth about our game we had, because our unit stats didn't matter.
Yeah,
it was the only stats that mattered was I won initiative and the movement that I had on my units.
And that seems like version 2, though, in a nutshell. Like, how many infantry can you cram into your list to be able to play the different missions? But, like, the Screamer now is an infantry, so he, I guess, technically can go into buildings and claim objectives and do all sorts of fun stuff. He's gone through a lot of changes since version 1, the beta, version 2 initial, because he just had Flame a little while ago, but now he's lost that, and he causes a fortitude check, basically, against all the models in the building. He lessens people's fortitude. I'm not actually opposed to the rules of the model, the Screamer going into a building and doing its thing. I think it can still be shot in CQ, but it's odd to see a Screamer inside of a building.
Why would it be weird for a 40-foot-tall monster to go into a standard human-sized building? I mean,
I guess, is the building really going to stop him? Is he crunching in?
The problem with the Screamer going into the building is now it creates this situation where you're like, why aren't Ronin or Samurai going in the building? Why isn't a tarantula crawling into a building?
It's a fluff issue more so than a crunch issue.
Well, it is a crunch issue too, because now you've granted a bizarre ability to a unit that shouldn't have it.
So
killing the stuff inside the building the way it does, I'm not necessarily opposed to. But
there is enough shit in this game to kill stuff in buildings already, regardless of the version of the rule set that you use.
I will say I preferred it halving the effectiveness of other squads around it. I liked that aura ability. So, like, for me, Scourge have tons of aura effects that I kind of like. Between the Overseer, you've got this guy. Well, I guess that's really the only two, now that I talk about it and point it out in the podcast. But those different abilities...
But that Overseer is such a core command unit.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. It was such a core command unit. I remember when that came out, I'm like, that is sweet.
But, but going back to the Screamer, the new rules for him, I think it's okay. Like, I'm not heartbroken about it. I think it works. The Scourge did not need any more flame, so them removing the flame off of it was okay. But like I said, the only thing is you've got this giant model that's bigger than PHR walkers that's climbing into buildings.
Well, it's as big as a Neptune.
It seems like there is either an aversion or a lack of understanding of legitimate support units. The Screamer was a support unit.
Oh, yeah. You never took the Screamer for the Screamer.
You took it for the Raider.
You took it for the Raider.
And you were grateful to put it next to a big CQB for the bonus.
Right. Which it would promptly die next turn because people shot it because, hey, nobody likes it. Yeah, nobody likes that thing.
Well, it's the same way with the Medusa. Jordan parks her next to a building. Oh, well, she's going to bolster that CQB.
Well, she survives 50 shots before she dies.
This is true.
Whereas the Screamer takes
Survives
3 and is happy.
I was thinking about shuffling stuff around and making sure I took 2 of her because she is Medusa is such a high utility unit. It can search. It's great out in the open because it's good anti-tank, and it's flame now. So.
It's my least favorite PHR sculpt.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily super crazy about the sculpt. I don't hate it, but crunch-wise, she's
That's
really,
just a fun
really
fact about the Medusa. She's my least favorite PHR sculpt.
Hey, but talking about PHR, they got that new starter out last week, and Resistance have their new stuff out.
You know, I
Those
really
don't seem like bad deals, to be
I
honest.
really like the Resistance starter.
Yeah.
I like that command unit. I think that hovercraft is like it makes me want to dig out some GI Joe toys. It's a cool model. I like the new light Resistance dropship,
Mhm.
the Raven.
The
I hate
Raven.
the fact that it's a Raven replacement because it was stupid that they lost Ravens and Archangels in the first place. But
Hey, the fluff moved on, man.
sure,
Fluff moved on.
sure. They've got a Mark 7 Viper now, so that works out for them.
They just now just need not Marine Force Recon.
Yep. And they'll be like Resistance Insurgents or some shit like that, I'm sure, where they'll have just been like Resistance fighters trained by Marine Force Recon, who is no more, because UCM don't have Marine Force Recon.
They still have Praetorians.
But the Praetorians were not Marine Force Recon, they were different stats.
Right.
Same model, different stats.
Correct.
Oh, were they the same model?
Yes,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Resistance UCM units were better than the UCM units.
See, coming as a Scourge player, all the Resistance models look the same.
You racist plug.
So the Raven for the Resistance had evasion, and UCM one didn't.
Yeah. Well,
So
makes sense.
I think the idea was supposed to be that the special forces who were ingrained with Allied resistance forces had been in the field a long time and were experienced troops, and they were supposed to have those bonuses.
Was it the
because of
Dodge
that.
was higher on the Praetorians or on the Marine Force?
The Dodge was higher, and I think they had a better CQ value.
I think that was the same.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think they were
The
both-
Dodge
they
was
were both
definitely. I think the Dodge was higher. I don't even remember anymore. It's been so long since I've had to deal with them. But I used to have to deal with them all the time.
Oh, version 2 game, I got to use the Corsair for the 2 turns that it was there.
Yeah, how was that experience?
didn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Corsair.
So, fast movers for.
No, it did do something. You shot down.
No, that was in version 2, or that was the beta game.
That was the beta game.
That was the beta
So-
game. That's when
Fast movers
we'll get there.
have had a troubled history in the drop verse from version 1 through DFE. I do believe that the attack run system of the beta was the closest they've gotten to being effectively useful.
Right.
I have 5 armies. 4 fully playable and a resistance army that's just for demos, but I have 4 legit armies with fast movers in them. I've never really used fast movers, but beta drop zone, I used the hell out of the Seraphim Retaliator on UCM because it was awesome.
No, that bombing run I hated.
Oh man, that was a great, and I mean, the model on the table now, it's just so
Fast movers
aren't fast.
They are just worse versions from version 1, and it's that which boggles me, but whatever.
Version 1 was pretty terrible.
They were pretty terrible, and they are worse than they were in version 1. So, I don't know. But I got to use the Corsair for 1 turn before Jordan won. And, it didn't hit.
Yeah. Well, so it was interesting playing both versions back to back. The core mechanics, the moving, the shooting, they're the same thing. They work.
Right.
It's not anything weird about that. The big differences that I really noticed that really changed the game. I mean, obviously CQ, embarkation, disembarkation is messy as all hell in V2.
Yeah. Now there is actually a part of the embarkation disembarkation with version 2 that actually does slow things down a little because of the way you embark, disembark, and stuff. Like you can't because they activate separate, not Simo. You can't move, pick up, and get out again.
Right.
Whereas you could kind of play around with that a little in version 1.
And that came up in our game too. When you were trying to hop between the buildings, which wouldn't have been possible in version 2.
Actually, there's an exception with the light drop ships, the free pickup. I could have.
No, you can't hover out of the building.
The free disembark.
You wouldn't have been able to hover out of the building.
The free disembark.
So, yeah, there was.
I couldn't have done it on the Valkyrie's activation. I mean, you sort of could have. The light dropship, because it's an air transport, can still suck it out for free, and it can still jump out. Ground transports, you can't go from one building to the other, right?
They would have been able to disembark from the building with their move, and then the dropship would have been able to eject them for free.
Okay.
In version 2.
Right.
Okay, so you'd have to go with them first. They go in, they could get into the other building, they just couldn't do anything.
Right. Which technically slows it down. So, I think did we cover this? Because we were talking before we started recording about risk reward.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So in the version 2 game, it went to turn 6 before it was decided.
No, beta game.
Or, I'm sorry, in the beta game, it went to turn 6 before it was decided. The exact same army list, the exact same table layout, the exact same mission.
The exact same turn 1 moves, essentially.
Yeah, it was almost exactly.
I mean, and that wasn't necessarily intentional. It's just we're making the same tactical choices about what units we were sending to the building.
And so I'm still looking at the model sitting on the table here. The center objective, the arguably the one that was going to decide it, but it wasn't. But one of the main fights in the game, there's one stand of Siren and one stand of Razor Worms that was what was whittled down to over the course of 3 turns of fighting in there.
The big fight happened over here.
Yeah.
And I overcommitted towards his
destroyers.
Destroyers.
And you have one squad of warriors over here.
But to me, you guys brought what, a combined total of probably 30 stands of infantry.
No.
20 stands.
A little over 20.
Yeah.
And there are 2, 4, 6 total left on the table. 5, because that one got almost wiped out. You guys chewed each other apart over the objectives. I mean, it was a literal. And at the end of the day, there's 5 objectives on the table. You got 1 off.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan got 2 off in 6 turns. That was a highly contested game from start to finish, and a lot of it, I think, boils down to the fact that it was the rules. It was the way
you couldn't. Yeah, you couldn't go in and immediately search for it and immediately leave with it.
Yeah, you were forced to fight for it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is you were forced to make tough tactical decisions, which I don't think.
I mean, if you're able to unload with Valkyries 2 times in a row with 40 shots, you're just rolling dice.
The subtle differences in how the infantry and movement on that side of things got sped up really affected what was an easy versus a hard tactical choice for me as far as going in and searching for objectives.
So, I mean, so we don't wrap it on, or so we don't ramble on too long on this. There's an ideal version of Drop Zone in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So
I would say all 3 of us here are, because we're such long-term players and we had so much time with version 1 and a lot of time with some of the beta stuff. We can't sit here and say we aren't biased.
We can say anything.
Right. And we're allowed to
Um,
say we like beta better.
Yeah, yeah. There are things in beta that I would change,
Right.
and there are things that I would incorporate from version 2. And we talked about this. Energy versus armor is a great change, with the caveat of a minimum 2 damage, minimum 4 crit, so that you're not critting on 2s and 3s.
Right.
Would be a good addition to V2, or would be a good addition to whatever you would call it, the community version, whatever. But fast movers, I think we agree. Airstrike is a better mechanic.
The airstrike mechanic is much better. If you look at the rules from the beta, there's huge risk reward. They cost dirt cheap to buy, but if you lose one, because they
Huge
give up,
kill points.
yeah, like a 35-point buy gives you like 170 point of loss if somebody knocks it out with AA.
Yeah, it's something crazy like that. I mean, like the Athena, I think was almost 300.
Right. Like it's speaking like from Corsairs or whatever in mind, but I really like that, and I know one of the complaints was that potentially the models were never on the table. I think there's an easy fix for that as far as how the rules and stuff were put in there. Well,
That's when
in
you
the past,
you just have like an X-Wing style rule set to play with your fast mover models.
I don't know. I got an easier one. Maybe we'll see it someday. But but no, I mean, really, if you want to talk about what was the lacking parts of the beta, so I agree. The beta just felt better. The game felt better. Things were getting to where they were supposed to be at like reasonable times. The battles, it was a slugfest. We had back and forth. The simultaneous CQBs was good. I really did not enjoy taking 40 plus machine gun shots to the face in version 2 before I got to activate.
The CQB stat itself, I'm not as attached to as I am the Simo shooting.
Yeah.
The way it was just one number and you had to multiply, I can see why people thought it was confusing.
I think you can find a better solution on the unit stat block to replace CQB with a legit hard number with a reduced effect than it is to do a multiple.
You could still have, like version 2 has the weapon profile for the close quarters weapon.
Right. So with Immortals, you could say it's CQ8 reduce 1 or whatever, reduce 2.
Yeah, knowing when they shoot and how they shoot, I do think in version 2 is less confusing.
Sure.
The whole lack of reaction and the activation order with it.
Maybe version 2 wouldn't be so bad if they allowed for like an Overwatch thing. Like you go into the building, you spend an action, and
that had been brought up, and that had been vetoed.
I'll just say it publicly. That would help.
No, I know. I'm saying I've said it publicly too, and it's been brought up, and it was vetoed. And that's that. So.
And that in and of itself would add a little bit more danger to
coming in second to a building.
Yeah, and in a subtle way, it'll actually like hold those two units together a little longer than they necessarily would otherwise.
So, I mean, in this age of COVID, we're pretty much down to no tournaments for anything.
Oh yeah, I mean, Adepticon's not happening next year, people. Just write that off.
I mean, I'll be hard pressed to think that Origins will still happen in any kind of capacity.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's going to depend. Anyways, it doesn't matter to discuss it now. As far as us getting together to play periodically, though, I look at that and like sitting here with 2 games today. And getting an old beta game in, it makes me excited to get my drop zone stuff out and play.
I was really excited to have these models on the table.
Yeah.
They are just wonderful models. The terrain looks great.
It's such an awesome looking game table. It's unlike anything else that you play. And that's we've moved on to bolt action and Antares and Warlords and Warcaster and Victory at Sea, and what are you playing? Not
Oak
Mike
and
Jack-
Iron.
Oak and Iron. Thank you.
I actually went really old school with Aaron. Maybe 3 games now with some BattleTech.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, we've gotten
Right.
so much shit on the table, and it's like this. Nothing looks like that, like Drop Zone, and that's testament to Dave's model design. It's testament. TT's terrain looks fantastic. I mean, this
Yes,
is
it
an
does.
entire Sci-Fi X table, and I absolutely love this terrain. I think it looks great. Some of it was frustrating to build, but you know,
Hey, once it's on the table.
That's not
Yeah.
TTMDF. That's just MDF.
right. But yeah, and it's a good looking game. Yeah, but playing version 2 and playing beta, I have no strong burning desire to play version 2 again.
I know my local community will all just say beta, but there are some version 2 groups. Well, at least one version 2 group that I'm aware of here in Ohio that is current or was currently playing. I don't know if they still are. It's been a little while since I checked in with them, and I'd be curious to hear how their thoughts are on everything, because it really could be that. And TT Combat has said, that they aim to change the pace of the game, and that this is what they like out of the game. Fine. Makes me sad, but
Yeah. And I guess it's one of those scenarios. You look at people who started playing 3rd edition 40K, are they still playing nowadays? Or, 9th edition 40K came out, and I don't think it's gone over very
why
well.
doesn't the last canon still have like a 3d6 +8 penetration or whatever?
I didn't know that it did in the first place.
It's wonderful.
Well, I think it was you that was telling me that version 8 came out, and people were like, I really like this, and then 6 months down the road, they're like, I may have miscalculated.
Yes. There's a reason 9th came out 2 years after 8th or whatever.
That was part of that unit stats for the version, not necessarily some of the
I would have to
rules.
defer you to the 40K players in my
Yeah.
area. So if anybody's, I'm out of Cleveland, Ohio. There is a ton of. I'm sure you could say that about any
Anywhere.
big city, but there's a lot of 40K in Cleveland, and basically they all came to that same conclusion.
Well, I know we said we are going to keep this quick, and we're clearing a half an hour.
Oh wow!
It's
Yeah.
not that long. It's not that short, but it's not that long.
I mean, we normally shoot for an hour for a regular episode, and here we are, halfway there. Do we want to talk about Hob? No, I'm kidding. I think Don does want to do a regular episode here really soon, considering it's been so long since we recorded anything.
Any
April, I think.
Any ditched us?
It's been a while. It was start of COVID.
I think I was on that one, and I'm not even a regular cast member.
Yeah, it's been.
Are any of us regular cast members anymore?
I don't know, man. And that's what's funny. I mean, we've all had free time. We just haven't. I painted 3 Gates of Antares armies and started an Erewhon army, and I mean, it's not like I haven't been doing gaming shit. So there's plenty of stuff to talk about. But yeah. Well, so final thought on V2, Josh?
I do like some of the choices of what they've incorporated into the game. I wonder if version 2 really is supposed to more focus on table quarters with the amount of death that happens in the game, because everything is so good at killing now. The rock, paper, scissors aspect of it is gone. I really wonder if you're talking about more focal points and table quarters as opposed to the what do they call them? Mobile objectives.
Yeah, that's what they call them.
So I think that might be a big factor if you were to run a version 2 tournament, that perhaps the mobile objectives just aren't the way to go, and you're talking more the table quarters and focused focal objectives.
More take and hold than take and extract.
Right. And I'm okay with that, but I think, well, The game seems a little bit too quick and a little bit too killy.
Agreed.
Well, and I think there was no choice that you could have made to slow anything that I did the turns.
No, especially for Scourge, where we have no long range. Well, not that you have that in turn one, anyways. But
Like you made no tactical blunders that allowed me to win that quickly.
right, yeah.
And I made no strong tactical choices
That should have allowed
me
you.
Should have
Yeah.
allowed me to win.
Secret to winning games: roll better. Jordan had all those nice rolls and ran off the table.
Swedish rules of winning: read mission, win.
So that's my thoughts on version 2. I do prefer the beta as it stands.
Jordan?
Pretty much what I just said about it's not any one thing. There's so many things that, subtle changes that allowed a little bit quicker things to happen. That there's not a stopgap anymore. I'm not going to go in and say the balances are gone, but it seems like the checks are gone.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking checks and balances. Like faction to faction, I haven't felt like that one outweighs the other.
I also don't feel like one plays differently than the other anymore.
No, but I mean there was subtle. You go with all the units that are out there for every faction. Everyone's pretty well rounded. You could go fast and slow with about anyone. It was easier to go fast with the Scourge than it was the PHR, but you didn't have to go the super slow that you used to have to go with the PHR.
Shoot, today the PHR were racing up the table.
Right.
I mean, with the Tritons and the Valkyries, yeah, it was a sped up version of the PHR.
Yeah.
What about you, Derek? What final thoughts do you have as an observer?
After 15 months, I don't see any difference from the problems I had with version 2 when it released. I don't think any of those problems will be addressed, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're not viewed as problems, or they don't care. I don't know which it is. I don't care. I really, even sitting here just like monitoring the feeds and chatting, I was way more into your second game than I was your first game.
Well, that's easier. That's an easy statement to say. The first game lasted 20 minutes.
It was a little longer than that, but yeah, it went pretty quick. Your first game at no point had any level of tension. By the same point in your second game, you could already see where the blowouts were coming in at.
Yeah.
I mean, you were watching everything getting ready to fall apart for one side or the other.
All we did was our deployments on our first rolls, and because of those first rolls, we're like, okay, I'm racing off the table, and that's it.
No, that's why I said version 2. It might be a fun and more rewarding game when you're dealing with table quarters.
Yeah,
maybe a behemoth will just claim one side of the table by itself. Who knows?
And what mission you're playing is something that even in previous versions of Drop Zone that used to be a conversation. People be like, I didn't like the game because of this. It's like, well, have you played a different mission?
Well, so you had, at least in version 1, like demoing the entire table was a valid tactic.
Yeah.
The beta the beta brought that in because only Devastator was really doing it.
Version 1, like real version 1, my understanding was that demo was out of control.
Right.
So 1.1 came out and it fixed it. But it was still
super easy to kill buildings.
Well, and as units came out, so when you got like the katana, it became a very valid tactic for the UCN to be like, oh, well, 12 energy 9 shots off of a big old brick of katanas.
The Mammoth.
Well, this is pre-Mimid. So pre-Mimid, when the katana was a new thing, you would bring 6 katana on Albatross with a few rapiers, or you would drive them on, and you would start blasting the backboard, and you were dropping 12 dice in the building, and you would put 24 points in the building.
I do like that about version 2. Got rid of driving on the table.
Yep.
That is a good point to version 2. Good job, guys.
Aerial superiority. Yeah, that is a good rule. And that is. And that was one of the things and I remember people bitching about that, is it's drop zone commander, not drive on commander. I mean, before version 2, Shoutari didn't bother with dates. You'd bring a couple to quick teleport some stuff around, but you'd normally just walk it on the table and call it a day. So yeah, that's a good change. I mean, end of the day though, yeah, there's still so many little things that make big problems in version 2 for me that I mean, I'm not selling my armies or anything, but I'm more waiting for a 2.5 or a 3 that hopefully dials it back to its basics a little more. But I mean, yeah, I'm interested in getting my armies out and playing more, but I'm interested in getting my armies out and playing, 2 beta rather than 2.1 live. So there you go. 15 months in, we've taken a look at version 2 and the beta version, and some people will probably agree with us. Some people will think we're horrible. It happens a lot, but
I guess another comparison we could make if we got around to doing this thing like this again is, rather than targets of opportunity, seeing how a table quarter style game plays out in comparison.
It's the only way to do it scientifically.
well, I guess we'll have to do this again in the future. I guess you guys will have to play version 2 again in the future.
Isn't that Don and your job for the next game?
Don and I don't have jobs. Don and I have to play Undead versus Gnolls. Which we were supposed to do today, Donald.
He caught the COVID.
No, he was afraid he was going to catch the COVID.
Oh, wrong Donald.
Oh, sorry. No, our Donald, not the Donald. Ron Loach, not. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye, guys.